Good morning, everybody, and welcome back to Coffee with Craig. I am your host, Craig DeLuz. This is my coffee, and this is our conversation. We very much enjoy and appreciate you guys tuning in and joining us as we talk about firearms policy, Second Amendment advocacy, you name it. We're talking about it right here. So please remember to like and share our video feed. Tell your friends so that they can become our friends. Also, remember to subscribe to our YouTube channel and follow us on Facebook so that you can get the alerts, well, as we go live. And once again, join the conversation as it's going on. Also want to remind you, FPCgear.com. That's FPCgear.com. We've got some very cool stuff waiting for you there. Know that every purchase that you make there will go to help support the work that we do at the Firearms Policy Coalition. So, support the Second Amendment and look good doing it. That's FPCgear.com. All right, interesting things are taking place. Tons of interesting things have been taking place when it comes to the Second Amendment. In particular, I want to talk about what's going on here in the state of California when it comes to the new bullet button assault weapon registry. As many of you know, there have been some crazy things that have been going on here in the state of California. We've seen some of the assault weapons regulations. We've seen them pulled back by the California Department of Justice. We've seen people trying to register their AR, their new assault weapons. I know you guys. I know what you're saying. There's no such thing as assault weapons. I get it. Those are the legal terms that they're using, so that's what I'm throwing out there for you. So leading up to the assault weapons registration deadline, there was tons of chaos going on. I mean, people not being able to access the website, the firearms getting turned down for absolutely no reason, you name it. In fact, here's a real brief snippet from a story that was done leading up to. Now, this was before the deadline to register your bullet button assault weapon. So we'll talk about this on the flip side, but check it out real quick.
This is a firearm that has been kicked back 3 times in the application process.
Jay Jacobson's a gun manufacturer, so he knows his firearms. Yet his attempt to register some personal rifles on the California state website has him stumped.
I believe they're maybe calling this a telescoping stock. It is a fixed stock. Other than that, I can't figure out why they have not allowed this to go through, and what's frustrating is they don't bother to tell you.
Meanwhile, the deadline is looming. Under a new California law, all semi-automatic rifles with a feature called a bullet button have to be registered by June 30th. It's a release mechanism that was designed as a workaround to the state's assault weapons ban, which forbids detachable magazines. Since the bullet button requires a tool, usually the tip of a bullet, to release the magazine, it was considered fixed and therefore legal. Then San Bernardino happened. The shooters, who massacred 14 people and wounded 21 others, were armed with bullet button ARs, finally swaying state lawmakers and the governor to change the law.
Please identify what your concern is or give me a call.
But Jay says staying legal is not an easy task. His application for one rifle has been rejected 3 times.
Everybody that's doing this is doing so to comply. They have a willingness to follow the law. And yet they're making it as difficult as possible.
Exactly. See, what they're doing is they've made it as difficult as possible in order to be able to comply with the law. How have they made it difficult? One of the things that they did was that, they didn't really provide a lot of information about, how do you know if you're compliant or not? How do you make sure that it is compliant? What are the devices that you may be able to add to your firearm or whatever in order to make it compliant so that you don't have to register it? But if you do want to register it, as you saw with this particular guy, he wanted to go ahead and register this firearm, but it kept kicking it back and wouldn't tell him why it was being rejected. In fact, it was so bad. The process and whatnot was so bad that if you notice, many of the firearms that were supposed to be registered, well, they just didn't quite make the cut. Here's an example, and this is one of the infographics that we've put out there, helping people once again to understand what's going on. So if you look here, those that are in the green are the actual registrations that were actually received. Those are the ones that were received and were approved. The ones that are in red, the little hands, Those are the registrations that were rejected by the state of California. And those question marks, those are all of the registrations that are still pending. That's right. These are registrations that still have not been approved by the state. They're still, in fact, out there. And people are trying to figure out, is my firearm in compliance? Am I in compliance with the law? Now, here are some of the real numbers. So this kind of gives you an idea of exactly what the California Department of Justice was dealing with, what they were trying to. In terms of the registration. So if you look here, there were about a little over 2,700 applications were processed from the time it opened until January 4th. And then you had about 12,000 applications from the 5th, which is the beginning of this year, all the way up until the deadline. But look here at the bottom, 52,000. That's right, 52,000, almost 52.5 thousand applications are still pending with the California Department of Justice, meaning these folks have absolutely no idea if they are in fact compliant with the law. And oh, by the way, in case you're wondering, based on these statistics, based on the information that's here so far, how long do you think it'll take for them to be able to make these, to go through all of these? If they went through all of them at the rate that they're going through them right now, it would take 2.15 years, 2 1/8 years before they are finally able to get through this entire list and make sure that everyone is in fact has had their application process, their applications reviewed. Now, maybe it's just me, but that is beyond insane. That is beyond crazy. Now, keep in mind, this is all information that we were able to get through Public Records Act requests that we went through, that we submitted in order to be able to get the answers to these questions. Here's a little bit more. Now, I showed you the little infographic earlier. This one is a little bit different, kind of once again showing you where we're at. So the number of individuals who are actually seeking to register their firearms as bullet button assault weapons is about 6,200. And the number of firearms that they are actually registered, that they actually were able to register, once again, 13,500. That's how many actually got registered here in the state of California. Now, I'm willing to bet you, and as I always like to say, I'm willing to bet you dollars to donuts that there are more than 13,519 ARs, or quote unquote potential assault weapon ARs in the state of California, which tells you a lot of people have chosen not to register or are still sitting in that pending group. That's right, they're still waiting to find out if they are in fact in compliance with the law. And that's the dangerous part. See, all of these people have gone through the process, once again, just trying to be in compliance with the law. And this doesn't even, I'm not sure if this even includes the number of people who simply weren't able to register their firearms. We're still going through that data and that information. We don't know if there are people out there who tried to register, who did everything they could to try and register, and it just flat out didn't work. These are just the people who were able to get their stuff into the system. That is how, it is amazing to me that we continue to give the California Department of Justice these technology projects, knowing how much they screw them up. And it's in no small part because, well, they were given shit to deal with in the first place. And so now they turn around and now they go to implement the law and they do a horrible job. Flat out horrible job. Let's break down some of the finances of exactly what went into this. So let's look at this real quick. So when they first talked about what it was going to take in order to do this, they said that it was going to take somewhere around 429 man hours to add the bullet button assault weapon registration system to CFARS. Now, CFARS is the registration. So it was supposed to only take that, and it was the hourly rate that they were billing at was $130. So the original estimate of what it was going to cost to add this bullet button registration was $55,770. That's how much it was supposed to cost. Well, guess how much it actually cost so far? The actual cost was over $100,000. In other words, well over twice what the original cost was. And then the fees collected should have been more than enough to cover it. But the real number here, the real number is there at the bottom. Because this is one of the things that we are constantly on the state of California and the legislatures when they put this stuff into practice. We're constantly on them about spending some money, putting some energy and resources into outreach, into telling people, how do I comply with the law? What exactly means if I'm complying with the law? Are there things that I can do to my firearm to make it so that I don't have to register it? Right? All of the things that should go into making sure that people know and people are able to comply with the law, they don't spend any money on it. And then they wonder why people are trying to figure it out at the very last second. Why they're trying to register their firearm at the very last second. Why are they doing that? Well, because the state didn't do their job. The state didn't tell them how to comply because they don't care. They don't care if you comply. They want to catch you so that they can take you to jail. Or at the very least, let me go back. In the end, what the Democrats and the people who propose these laws are hoping is this. I'm not going to say that they want to necessarily throw you, Mr. Law-abiding citizen, into jail. I'm saying what they do want to do is they want to take your firearms. What they do want to do is create an environment where, look, you're looking at jail time, but we'll, plea bargain it. We'll just keep your firearms. Now, in the end, that's what they want to do. Now, because of the lack of actual lack of actual outreach, the lack of education, and the fact that their system just flat out didn't work, we're going to be looking at probably about 3%. 3% of those who want to register their firearms were able to register their firearms. 3%. 3%. That is abysmal. When you have that number of people who wish to comply with the law, right? This is their goal. Their goal is, we just want to comply with the law. So what do we wind up doing? We make it difficult for them to comply with the law. And then we wonder, well, what happens? Well, in response to their piss-poor performance, the Firearms Policy Coalition and a number of other organizations have decided to sue Javier Becerra and the California Department of Justice again. Because for some reason, they just seem either unwilling or unable to comply with the law, to do their job. I mean, if Javier Becerra spent half the amount of time focused on making sure that his systems like this were in place and that he was making it so the Californian gun owners could comply with the law, instead of spending all of his time suing the federal government, filing frivolous lawsuits, and putting out press releases about those frivolous lawsuits, we probably wouldn't be dealing with this right now, would we? So we filed a lawsuit. And in this lawsuit, it's real simple. It points out, Javier Becerra, you're a fuck up. And you're not doing your job. And because you're not doing your job, you are making it impossible for law-abiding citizens to comply with the law. So, 1, you need to make sure that everybody who tried to register their firearm will be given the opportunity to register their firearm. Number 2, do your fucking job! Do your job, right? Stop with all of stuff. Because here's the thing, folks. If we cannot get the Attorney General to do his job when it comes to stuff like this, remember, the ammunition registry and the background checks, that's right around the corner. That's about 5 months away? In 5 months, they're supposed to be running background checks on ammunition, and we don't even know how they're going to do that. And by the way, they want to do background checks on firearm parts. We don't even know how they're going to do that. more technology. And these guys can't even figure out how to program the VCR. But they know how to send out a press release. They know how to send out tweets against Donald Trump. They know how to do that. It is amazing just the number of times that Javier Becerra has gotten away or thinks he's gotten away with not doing his job. I know you guys are saying, look, Craig, why are you guys filing these lawsuits? These people, they're registered. They're just trying to register their firearms. They're complying with an unconstitutional law. Well, you know what? Here's the thing. We're against registration, right? We do not believe that having to register these firearms as assault weapons is constitutional. We do not believe that, and yes, we are challenging that. But with that, what we cannot have happen is we cannot have law-abiding citizens. We cannot have law-abiding citizens basically made into criminals for legally possessing something. And these folks they've decided that they're going to register their weapon. You know what? That's their right. If that's what they choose to do in order to comply with the law until we got better laws, whether it's through the courts or through the legislature, until we have better laws, that's their job. But you know what? Don't turn them into law-abiding. Don't turn law-abiding citizens into criminals. All right? Because here's the thing. These folks all of them have attempted. They've attempted to upload and send information, and they've said, by the way, they've sent information to the California Department of Justice saying that they own these firearms, and if they're not legal owners of them, in other words, if because their process didn't work, and now all of a sudden they're not legally registered, they could face criminal charges, felonies. Because Javier Becerra didn't do his job. That should not be the case. There's no way that should be the case. To pass a law that is, and then make it impossible for someone to comply. Impossible. We all know, though, that the California Supreme Court believes that just because a law is impossible to comply with doesn't mean that it should be thrown out. But at least in this case, we do know that they said that it should affect whether or not there's an enforcement of it. So, should they be enforcing this law for which, at least with these people who've attempted to register and have had their ability to register tonight? They've stepped forward, they said, I want to follow your draconian law. And as they've stepped forward to say they want to comply, they have been arrested or put in a position where they could be arrested. You think that's justice? Javier Becerra thinks that's justice. I noticed not one press release from Javier Becerra about his broke-ass, busted and disgusted assault weapon registry system. It is a hot ghetto mess. But he didn't put out a press release on that saying, hey, we're gonna address this. You would think he would have put out some sort of a press release saying they would address it. It's now, what are we? Well, almost 3 weeks into the month. I mean, nope, not word nor peep for Mr. Javier Becerra, because he's too busy suing Trump. Anyway, folks, listen. If you tried to register your bullet button wet firearm, if you tried to register it and you were unable to, please contact our legal hotline. The contact information is in the description of this video. Please go ahead and do that. Once again, for those of you who decided I will not comply, well, you are where you are right now. And, have patience with those who decided that they are willing to register. For those of you who decided to utilize one of the various workarounds, whether it's going featureless, which is the one thing that we know for sure allows you to comply with the law, or one of the others like the AR Madlock and one of those. Once again, with all of those, just know this. The Department of Justice has said they will not say whether or not, they will not make a ruling on whether or not any of those workarounds are in fact compliant with the law. But what they did say was if those folks sent a letter into them asking them to give a ruling, if they didn't just flat out tell them it's not compliant, then, if it was, let me clarify, if it was flat out not compliant. They told him it was flat out not compliant. So I don't know if they've issued any of those letters. But I just say all that to all of you, just once again, to just say this. Know what you're doing. When it comes to exercising your rights and complying with the law, know exactly what you're doing. Take the time to ask the questions. Take the time to talk to someone who, in fact, does know. And at least, like I said, if you're going to decide not going to comply, at least go into it with your eyes wide open, right? I think that makes sense. You think it makes sense? Anyway, I think it does. Anyway, folks, that's going to be it for today's Coffee with Craig. I thank you guys so much for tuning in. I thank you for liking and sharing these videos, telling everyone about the Firearms Policy Coalition, because we are the home in the fight for civil rights. Got to use them, or you're going to lose them. You guys take care.
If you like our videos, follow, subscribe, like, and share.